Happy Friday, everybody. We're moving right through June. I'm really excited. I'm your host, Trae. It's July. Man, July. Oh my gosh, yeah, the chop has had us all discombobulated. We're getting back into it. A little bit of self-care this week, a little bit of sleep, a little bit more than the last few weeks. But happy Friday to you all. Welcome to the Morning Update Show. I'm your host, Trae Holiday. We're excited to bring you in today, and we have a few guests that we're going to get into later on in the show. As always, I got to throw it over to my guy, Big O. Big O, how are you today? Happy Friday.
I'm good. It's Friday.
Yeah.
It looks like we make it through another week in 2020. And be honest with you, the days and months started to blur together way back in during the start of COVID.
Yes.
So just you thinking it's still June, it's okay. You know what I'm saying? Don't worry about it. How you doing though?
I'm good. Getting ready to go to Chicago later today with Nana Kabibi. So excited to go out with my mentor and get a little bit more self-care.
Man, my son goes to school in Chicago.
Yeah.
At Loyola University. They're studying broadcasting.
Absolutely. Yeah, I know you've gone there to visit him several times. So I was asking you about your food recommendations.
Yeah, go to Soul Crab.
There we go.
and you'll be good. So we got a few guests today. We have Justin Carter again, and people always love when Justin comes on here because he's so informative, from the Capitol Hill Seattle.com website and blog. And then we have Marcus Henderson from Black Star Farmers. We played a clip of him yesterday. Got a lot of feedback. People like the garden or what he's trying to do. So he'll be in here at the end of the show. But yesterday there was this big press event. It was like 100 people on there, man, on a Zoom and everything else. I know you were in and out on it, but you got any highlights from the presser yesterday?
Well, you know what, honestly, as we've been talking about just kind of the new normal, this coalition style, it was really good to see so many organizations and individuals representing different organizations really come together and explain their demands, and really explain it. And so I loved hearing, of course, from my great friend, Nikita Oliver. I really think that getting people to understand the background of how would this money be spent, how would the community utilize the defunding, what does that really look like for community? It was good for folks to get at least that awareness. And so I'm happy to hear Justin's take on it later in the show.
Yeah, I mean, well, it's always good to just hear people talking and sharing their ideas and their thoughts about, what's going on. Our big thing, someone's like, man, people need to talk about things more. I mean, and there are a lot of devils in the details, so to speak. You know what I'm saying? It's I think the concept, because it's one big concept. It's almost like building a house. You're like, man, we're gonna build a house, and so you might secure the land, you got the architect, everything, and then it comes down to like what fixture goes where. You know what I'm saying? What faucet are you gonna use? And that's where all the details kind of get caught up in. And so the concepts of budget reduction or budget reallocation, that's like, okay, that's a big deal. And you kind of move it in one block, but it's like, man, what are the details of it? So it's good to be able to at least hear from the community, hear from Nikita Oliver and the 37 or 47 other people that were on the call.
Yeah, some great folks out there.
You know what I'm saying? But it was good to hear from people and try to get an understanding as to the way forward. And I think that now there's two separate conversations, because there's a conversation as to what groups like Decriminalize Seattle and Creative Justice and King County Equity Now are asking for. Mm-hmm. But then there's also the stuff that the mayor had promised, which is a whole other conversation. The mayor had promised $100 million a year for the next 10 years. The mayor promised $5 million this year for tutoring. The mayor promised to transfer properties and everything else. And so we got to remember in keeping everybody accountable that it's two buckets here.
Yeah.
There's what the community is demanding, and then there's what the mayor, she's the one who promised it.
Yep.
You know what I'm saying? And so we're yet to hear some details around that plan as far as out of City Hall, but I guess it's good to hear that these different coalitions are putting their plans together.
Yeah, and one of the things I think I really appreciate about our city the most is that there's actual solutions being said on the ground. I talk to my cousins across the country. One of my cousins, North Carolina, she's like, man, we don't have any organizations doing that. She's like, I don't know where to bring my energy, when I want to raise my kids and teach my kids about this particular movement, what's going on here. She said, there were some small protests, but to know that, just hearing from my people across the country, even the fact that Seattle's really working on a coalition style solutions that are going to be sustainable over time and bringing a lot of those resources into the community is beautiful to see. And so I to be honest, I guess I was thinking, man, this is happening everywhere. Everybody's coming up with solutions, but really it's something that's a bit unique, I think, to Seattle.
Well, one thing about Seattle, at least a few years ago, we had like the highest literacy rate in America and the highest per capita of library cards. So it's not surprising that Seattle is a leader as far as people that are, no matter what side of this issue people are on, the majority of people, especially people from here, invested in the city, might live in the city, you know what I'm saying? They like to read, they like to stay up on stuff. So, I mean, Seattle actually leads the way in a lot of different things around community and community organization and everything else. It's going to be interesting to see what happens. There's some city council members now who, after that presser yesterday, are saying that they're going to lend their support to what King County Equity Now and Decriminalize Seattle is proposing as far as defund. I think I read, and actually Justin's here to give us more detail. They said a veto-proof majority. But one thing I will say is this: politicians are known to waffle. You got a waffle maker at your house? You know what I'm saying? So it's not over until it's over. We've seen, I think even whatchamacallit, they had a tax before. It was like, it's just something different when they taxed Amazon like 2 years ago, and then it passed, and then it didn't pass. And then, you know what I'm saying? So, it's interesting that some of the council members are saying that this is what they're going to support, this is what they're going to be a part of. But like I said, man, in any city, and not just ours, man, city halls are full of wafflers. So, I'm sitting here with the syrup, and the jam, and seeing who gonna waffle on what they talking about today. It's just the nature of politics.
Yeah, and I think that you're so right about that. Oh, and honestly, I think that's why now they understand there's a whole other eye on them now with these demands and like the uprising of just protesters. There's a lot more people who are like, man, I'm holding my city, my elected officials accountable. Again, even just taking a note from Converge and from our show, and you in particular, like, take your stake back. You know what I mean? And actually do what you need to do to hold your folks accountable. So I'm always optimistic. I'm really hoping that when we talk about new normal and these elected officials understand they have an opportunity now to showcase what that looks like and exemplify that. So I'm hoping we don't have too much back and forth, but you're right. That is what we're used to.
That's true. So also, like I said, we have Justin on the show today. We're actually going to bring him out here in a second. We have Marcus Henderson. Also, we got some clips from yesterday and early this morning. This morning, somebody vandalized that memorial wall and candlelight vigil that's right over there around the corner. We got a clip of that. The black women, their march, their protest yesterday, and it keeps evolving. They actually did something very different yesterday. They all met at Powell Barnett Park in the Central District. And so they, instead of marching through the streets, they just all met there. And I think they're diversifying the way that they connect. And so we popped in there for a second as well. Then also the news that, the CHOP 2.0 is they got an eviction notice yesterday. They got an eviction notice. People at Seattle Central confirmed it, that their plan is that, basically under, I think we have the paper somewhere, but under the law in the state of Washington, the city of Seattle, or whatever governs that property, camping is illegal from 10 p.m. to 6 a.m. Now, there isn't an overwhelming number of campers. People who follow us follow me and it's Converge on Twitter. You see, I've put some photos up there for the past few days of the campers. Some are of the unhoused population or homeless population. Others are protesters. So Seattle Central is wanting to put a fence around the southern lawn to prevent people from camping on their property. And so my understanding in reaching out to Seattle Police Department, to public information, is that the Navigator team, officers from the Navigator team went there yesterday and handed out a flyer saying, hey, you guys got to leave They wanted them gone last night, so the fencing could go up today. I don't know if they're still on that timeline.
Wow, I mean, again, it's really good to hear these updates because there's so much going on. And honestly, I didn't know anything about it. So I just love, even sometimes being on the show and learning myself as a citizen right here. It just is great because you don't know some of those things. And I know that there's always park hours, right? In terms of even when you are, there's certain areas where it's like, look, this is 24-hour camping. So
Right.
I understand some park hours.
Well, and that's the thing, is it's like the legalities of it, of like who actually owns Seattle Central, who administers Seattle Central, is it the state, is the city, is all these. They're like, look, man, nobody's camping.
Yeah.
So I don't know if they'll meet that 1 o'clock deadline today. Clearly, there's still people, at least an hour ago, there were still people camped over there on the southern lawn in Seattle Central. And, it very well might create another situation of where now the Seattle Police Department is basically pushing people off the property because the college has to put a fence there and everything. I mean, I know probably even SPD's like, damn, we got to go do this now,
Right,
So
right.
we'll see how it plays out. There. We're going to take a short break right now. When we come back, we have Mr. Justin Carter. That's J Seattle on Twitter. He's going to be talking about a whole lot of action down in City Hall, these long press. He was able to sit on the 5-hour press conference yesterday and get all the notes. I was not. And then a few other things happening around Capitol Hill, the Central District, our neighborhood. You are watching the Morning Update Show. All right, welcome back to the Morning Update Show. My name is Omari Salisbury, and today, again, you know what I'm saying, we love to have you here. You know what I'm saying? We have Justin Carter of CapitolHillSeattle.com. You know what I'm saying?
It helps that I live nearby.
Yeah, no, it is, because I can always hit you at like 6 a.m. Like, hey, man, did you see this? I'm like, yeah, man, can you come through?
That's what
no
it's
problem.
about.
You know what I'm saying? Man, so tell us, yesterday there was the big presser on Zoom, with all of these heavy hitters and big names and everything else. You had people from King County Equity Now, from Creative Justice, Decriminalize Seattle, I think some council members and some everything else, man. Tell us all about it.
Yeah, it was a real good springboard to get a lot of the discussions that have been going on moving at an even higher level after the big budget committee meeting on Wednesday. Proposal from King County Equity Now and from Decriminalize Seattle that really starts to spell out how defunding would work from just the logistical standpoint. Things like moving the 911 operators out to civilian control and maybe where those kinds of savings and monies, revenues would go in the city. I did avoid, though, the language around the veto-proof majority that a lot of people are talking about on Twitter,
Right.
because that's such a legislative term. We're nowhere near knowing exactly what the council is going to come back with. What happened that was key from the city council standpoint is that 7 people that are part of this important body have now said they support defund SPD. What those individuals mean when they say defund the Seattle Police Department, though, is what we're going to find out over the next basically 2-week process.
Right. I mean, like I said, the politicians, man. You know what I'm saying? So it's going to be interesting to see like how many of these city council members like yesterday are caught up like in the euphoria of it, and then they go back to their district. I know we have 2 at large, right, and five in district. Yeah. And what their feedback is, or what the at large is, or I support defund, but I support defund in only this category or whatever. It's difficult to keep a majority that big together over something as important as this defund issue.
Sure, and I think what people need to get ready for is there is going to be a victory here, but it's going to be, you're rewarded with a process. And in Seattle, there's a joke about the Seattle process. This is going to be a new one, talking about basically participatory budgeting that's going to come out of this. I think that's what we saw yesterday, an alignment around this idea that, yes, we are going to begin to defund the Seattle Police Department. And this year, it might be a goal of 50% that gets stated, but there won't be anything like a 50% cut that we see in the near term.
What do you think is going to happen here?
I do see kind of the growth of a new process, and you can look at that in a way of like politicians, and that sucks. And what did we really win from all these weeks of push and protest? But introducing this kind of political stream, it's a victory, and I think people should look at it that way.
So what you say is the process or the system changing itself, I mean, that in itself is already somewhat of a victory.
Yeah, I mean, you see people basically put a new cog in this big machine. Now it's still the big machine, and now people need to crank it and make it happen. But yeah, there's this new part there now, and that I think isn't a small thing.
Right. And so what I was just talking to Trae about is that you have the demands that are over there from King County Equity now and from Decriminalize Seattle and quite a few other people. But then you also have the stuff that the mayor promised. Mm-hmm. And so, I mean, and I guess we're kind of waiting for that more detailed information on the mayor's side. She promised $100 million a year. I don't know, does that fit into the coalition's demands? I mean, they didn't necessarily ask for what. Maybe somebody did ask for $100 million, the $5 million in tutoring, the buildings and everything else. Do you see these as all in one pot, or do you see it two separate streams? One's this legislative stream, one's budgetary.
Mayors are hugely important, but I'll be honest, I don't pay as much attention to those kinds of initiatives from the executive office, because it takes the legislative branch, to really make these things happen. They shape everything that comes out of the executive, and she has a lot of power about what will happen with the decisions that are made by the council. But right now the ball is in the council's court, and so that's where I think the focus needs to be. I think a lot of stuff that Mayor Durkin's been talking about is kind of a framework that the council is now working within, because they do need to align in the end to make something actually happen.
Mm-hmm. And what actions do you think the council is willing to take? How far is the council?
Yeah, no, I mean, we're going to see. I think there's been so much effort to discuss the 911 call center. I do think there'll be some kind of movement there around moving that out to civilian control. It's a weird kind of thing to win. The 911 operators suddenly be under civilian, but there's a lot of
majority of them are already civilians, but it's not under civilian control.
It's not under control. And so I think there's a lot of pretty interesting reporting that I've just started to read about how those things can be beneficial. And then you'll start to see, I think, probably specifics about a budgeting process that will be more participatory for policing. And that might really be the two most solid things that come out of this, besides the cuts that need to happen just from a COVID crisis standpoint.
Do you see, what are your thoughts on, do you see like a process actually moving forward in Seattle where civilians are now taking calls for, mental health and things like that?
I think it's very difficult to. I'm not an insider. I have no idea really what the folks in the halls want to do. But if you look at what's actually happening, we already have seen some of these things occur. Seattle Fire has built up kind of a new type of health one and I mean, if you want to really freak yourself out, in some places they're starting to arm firefighters, so it's kind of going the other way. We don't want to go there, but I do, these things are already happening. These tides are already in motion, and this is an opportunity, I think, for them to be reshaped and hopefully build some good things.
Right. I know a few of the other things that are on there is they wanted to reduce training. They wanted to reduce overtime. It's quite a few other points. I think that even when talking with Nikita Oliver, talked to her yesterday by text before the show yesterday, she was saying that, and I don't know if you saw yesterday's show, but we were kind of putting what Chief Best was saying and actually Nikita Oliver kind of side by side. And there's a lot of similarities in what they're saying, at least around that issue, around like the mental health calls and things like that. And what Nikita Oliver said is that, it's a process. And at some point that there would be overlap between the police and these community initiatives for a certain amount of time until, there's transparency and everything else. So even the idea of like, snap a finger and then all of a sudden the community is handling everything, there has to be a process for ramp up.
Yeah, and I've heard a lot of Nikita's ideas, and I've heard Chief Best talking a lot about having more help from the community. That's kind of her code for participatory budgeting.
Right.
So yeah, I mean, you could see a day where there are special police officers or authorities that help deal with the issues around policing that we want to move out of criminalized police world. But that's probably really just such a long ways off. That's definitely not something that's going to happen in the next 2 weeks. And that's not going to be something that even legislatively I think they know how to approach.
Last question on City Hall. So 2 weeks from now, what do you predict is going to happen as far as the budget, voting, things like that? I know you're not a prognosticator. You're not you're an outsider like me. So that's why we get along well.
Can I answer philosophically?
Yeah, of course.
I think tomorrow's going to look a lot like today. And you have to find your victories in that and see what you can build on next. You can't expect a sea change. You have to expect another step. There'll be a new step forward. Another new step. Make it a forward step is something we're going to have to work on.
Said tomorrow's going to look a lot like today. Yeah, you come out with your book. Justin says.
Yeah.
All right, so Chop 2.0 over there on Pine and Broadway, man. What are your thoughts about that?
Well, you're ahead of me on the story. I don't have anything about the fence, but I'm not surprised. I talked with the folks from the school about it. And for me, this echoes with Occupy. 9 years ago, the Occupy camp ended up there, and the Seattle colleges system had to put in a new set of rules around camping and protesting that we still see in place today, and it's affecting this current very small camp.
Yeah,
it's tiny. It's mostly folks that are unsheltered or underhoused, but there are some activists involved. I hope it doesn't turn into another kind of standoff, but there are folks that want to stand their ground there.
Yeah, a young lady told us last night. She said she's going to chain herself to the tree.
Yeah, I'm curious to see what the appetite is for folks to keep pushing. People are so tired on all sides.
There's a lot of fatigue.
Yeah, it's a lot.
Sure.
Even the reporters are a little tired.
Who are you telling, bro? News around the neighborhood: Capitol Hill, Central District, Mount Baker, Madison Park. Your core area.
Sure. I mean, we've got the kind of very weird story around the Trader Joe's right there on the line between the Central District and Capitol Hill. So they closed down indefinitely for some kind of remodeling. The workers there said it was punitive over Black Lives Matter support. The company said, no, we had this planned all along. We were making some changes around, they weren't really even specific around what those changes were going to be. They've reopened. You can see the changes now. It's mostly around COVID and making a better kind of entrance, and they've eliminated the sample station. I'm sorry, thoughts and prayers around that.
Yeah, I used to hit that sample station hard.
But none of the demands for the workers have been met, and the labor issues, whatever they are, continue to kind of go on there. I have seen no sign of the crowds of shoppers being reduced, but maybe some people are deciding not to shop there now.
All right. Any other news around the neighborhood?
Yeah, you have to start paying for parking next week.
Really?
Yeah. The COVID freebies are going away for the essential travel that we've all been doing over the last few weeks.
I've been essentially traveling with these feet, man. All over Seattle.
Now you're going to pay 50 cents an hour to park. They're going to start at the lowest rate that's allowed, and I think they'll use their analytics over time to start raising prices again to whatever the limit was. I think $5 is some of the highest prices we had before
parking
it got shut down.
Expensive.
Yeah, it's not cheap.
All right. Before we let you go, how can people catch up with you?
Sure. So I'm at CapitolHillSeattle.com with news and information around Capitol Hill and the Central District every day, and then also tweeting at JSeattle on Twitter.
Yeah, make sure you follow this guy, JSeattle. You know what I'm saying? That's where I get all my news from, from this guy right here. Justin Carter, thank you so much for joining us.
Thanks for having me again.
All right, we'll be right back on the Morning Update Show.
Well, welcome back to the Morning Update Show. I'm your host, Trae Holiday, and we are in the month of July, as I was corrected this morning. Lots been going on here, and we at the Morning Update Show want to try to cover as much as we can. Our guy Big O's been doing that for many, many days. Thank you, man. Love this show and love the coverage we've been bringing.
Yeah, well, I definitely love the show.
Yeah.
Love hosting it with you.
Absolutely.
You know what I'm saying? Got any big plans for the weekend? Oh, you said Chicago, right?
Yeah,
that's
so
what it
you know,
said,
my
Chicago.
favorite is Harold's Chicken, man. So I don't know if Khabibi's had it, but that saucy chicken, I'm definitely getting some this weekend.
Right. Well, see, Loyola's campus, where my son goes to school, that's in the north part of Chicago near Rogers Park. Yeah, it's kind of limited. I mean, there's lots of food there, but like if you're a foodie, because it's it's college.
Yeah.
So we always go down into the city every time we're over there. Well, we hit some spot though. What was that spot? Oh, the jerk chicken spot.
You mean the Jamaican spot?
The Jamaican spot.
Yes, I don't remember.
It was like Auntie B's or something like that.
Yeah,
on
you
Devon,
on
Devon and Sheridan.
How do you know that?
I'm the global citizen. You know what I'm saying?
Seriously.
Got the GPS. So we got a few clips from just around from yesterday. This first clip here is this morning, walking over here into studio this morning. We had noticed it is the first time, believe it or not, in this whole period around protests since that memorial wall was put up, that we actually saw it like somewhat vandalized or whatever. Like even during the protests, like protesters would go over there and they would be like guarding it and everything else. So that's what caught my eye this morning when if you could put that clip up there, Alia, when we walked by there. So somebody had kicked over a lot of the cones and broke some of the candles and pushed some stuff out. But a lot of the business owners right there on 11th came out, and the different business owners actually put everything back and did some other stuff over there. So we saw that this morning. What else do we have here?
Well, I was just gonna say too that's really the resilience we're seeing. I mean, the togetherness that really we saw here, that is just continuing on in Capitol Hill. I mean, again, I think there's a lot of folks who've been saying, hey, the spirit of the CHOP isn't gone in that regard, and having business owners come out to do that is part of that.
I'll be honest with you. So they didn't want to be on camera. But some of the business owners that I saw putting the memorial back together are people who were vehemently against the choppers, you know what I'm saying? But they weren't against the protest, the expression, you know what I'm saying? A lot of these guys were like, man, they were, because their business was impacted and all this stuff, they definitely were against the chop, the occupation, but they weren't against the protest itself. And that's what you saw this morning when local business owners came and then repaired it. So we'll make sure and get a video of its state now. And actually, I think they were saying that they were going to bring more candles and make it bigger. So it kind of tells you the thought process. I think of a lot of Seattle was, there were some people who were very much for CHOP and Chaz. Yeah. A lot of people who were against it, even like when we talked to Robert Flagg the other day. You remember Angry Black Man, as they put, Angry Black Man clears stuff out the street. He was a Iraq War veteran, suffers from PTSD. He was totally against the CHOP because he lives on 12th Avenue Arch and he couldn't move freely, but he was totally for protest. Yeah. So that's kind of what we see there. Yesterday as well, up there, Seattle Central. There was a Confederate monument that was at the cemetery. Is that Lakeview Cemetery? It's right up there. At Lakeview Cemetery. It's been there for a long time. I think it's the Daughters of the Confederacy put it there many moons ago. And as part of protest season, it was something that was actually toppled. If you can put this clip up here, And so, I leave my audio open. And so what happened yesterday is protesters, this is the necklaces. Do you have a clip for that one?
Yeah, it's River.
Oh, okay, River. There you go.
It has audio behind it. Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
So if you could put that one up for me. So basically what happened is that somebody broke the stones of the Confederate monument, and then they made necklaces out of it. Do we have it?
Yeah.
Can you put it?
You'll lose your audio. You won't be able to.
Oh, well, I needed to talk over it. Well, you could just play a few seconds of it.
Sure.
It was knocked down spontaneously, anonymously, and then these pieces showed up to me today, and I decided to create something with this. You know what I mean? Something beautiful for everybody right now. So this is our space. These are our streets. Feel me? That monument should never have been there in the first place. Like that was something everybody asked the question to. Like, why was it ever there? You know? So right here is the reason why it should never have been there. This is what it's for, jewelry. It's for jewelry, really. It's a nice, pretty rock, and everybody should wear it around their neck. It's not diamonds, it's not gold, but I don't know. It's cool.
More valuable than anything.
Yes. Hey guys down by the street light, guy across the street, everybody come grab a necklace. It's from the Confederate monument. It's been knocked down, you know about that? And we turned it into jewelry. It's free, we're not selling anything. We don't sell anything. If you want to donate anything, that's fine, but everything that...
So first of all, we see Rivers been busy since he got released from jail from his protest charges. And yeah, so like I said, it looks like the people broke up the Confederate monument even more after it got toppled, made it into necklaces. And he said that it was a group that actually dropped the necklaces off to him to give to protest. I guess they're going around the city dropping off necklaces made out of the monument.
Well, you know, one of the things that I think we're seeing now, really, I think this week has been showing it more so than anything, just the spirit of CHOP spreading throughout the city. You know, like folks just are, when they're like, look, I'm not happy, okay, I'm not in Capitol Hill, I'm gonna take it down here, I'm gonna dismantle this over here. I've been getting my own reports, people, you know, hey, we're doing speeches over here, and just smaller groups doing different demonstrations and their own style of protesting. So it looks like that was another form of that.
Well, yeah. Next here, I think Jake actually caught up over there. The women's march, it's been different. It's been evolving kind of every day. 2 days ago, they went up to Jefferson Park yesterday, and yesterday it was like a drive-in. So instead of marching, they basically all transported one way or another over to Powell Barnett Park. And we see that in talking to some of the leaders there of the women's march, that, you know, they keep trying to diversify what they're doing. So some days they're marching, other days it's like a teach-in, you know, other days it's just, you know, broad discussion and everything else. If you could bring up the clip from the women's march, please.
Okay, so audio over it.
Sure.
Sometimes I can be an asshole. I can be, but you know, it's not because that's just I'm an egotistical asshole. It's not like nothing like that.
So yeah, this group has I mean, for the most part, I think there's one day out the week, maybe 2 days out the week that they don't participate, but you know, they've been really consistent. And a lot of these guys, this was my first time going back out and catching up with this group. This is the same group that was on the freeway. Mm-hmm. And so I saw a lot of the same people I hadn't seen since that night on I-5. But yeah, I mean, their efforts continue. People are doing all kinds of different things. You got some people who are up here at CHOP 2.0 at Seattle Central who are campers. You got some people like the women's group who either they're marching or doing, you know, teach-ins and sit-ins. I guess you got people like Creative Justice and King County Equity Now who are on the legislative path. And then there's a lot of other people behind the scenes doing all kinds of different things. Like, we don't know everything for sure. But man, it looks like protest season continues. It's metamorphizing, if that's a word. But we're definitely still in protest season. I think that as it goes on, though, it's going to move more like it's supposed to, most likely down to City Hall and things like that. Oh, there's a protest today from I think they're going straight down Pine from Seattle Central down to Pike Place Market.
Yeah, it's happening all throughout the state, really. Just got notification. Nikki's going to put it in the description. There's another protest happening in Marysville, right, at State and Grove, and they're doing a whole protest, and they've been doing that every week, too. So you're seeing a lot of factions of people just pulling together the groups that they know. Maybe it's even, like, hey, neighbors and community members that are just getting together to do these things even in smaller groups. And so you really are seeing this resilience happen. And just like you said, even with the Black Women's March, the fact that they only are taking maybe a couple of days off during the week, it's clear that, people are not stopping until they see real change. I think it's one of the things that you were able to elevate on just asking some of the protesters, like, what are they out there for? Folks want change.
Right, and I think this is why it's also important. I know that, like, people hear me get on, City Hall or get on the county, and I think actually yesterday the governor's task force might have met on something, but of course we didn't get an update for it. The thing is that the protests, they're either happening around us, we catch it on camera, we talk to people and everything else. And so the balance, I'll just be honest with you, the balance of information here is unbalanced because the city doesn't communicate with us to tell us even the smallest things. You know what I'm saying? The county doesn't communicate with us. Nikki, didn't you say Inslee, his group met yesterday?
Yes.
So the governor, they had their task force on police and issues and everything else. It'd be good to hear from the governor. We want to be able to give balance into this situation as to what's going on. Next week, we're going to have the Seattle Police Officers Guild on here because we want to hear from the police. We want to hear from the officers themselves. It would be good to be able to hear from the city as far as, like, how things are budgeted. How the concept when we talk about the devil is in the details. How are some of these things that, like, even Chief Best, what she's reimagining, who else does she need buy-in for? Does the city council need to change any laws or codes? Regulations, the RCWs need to be adjusted on the state level to bring all this reimagination into life. But when the city isn't really getting the information out there, or the county as to what they're doing, could be doing great things. But if it's happening behind closed doors, or if they're having a task force meeting or whatever, you know what I'm saying? They should want to be able to get this information out, because we'll definitely bring it up here in the show, and then people sitting at home and be like, oh, okay, well, I see, well, the state did something, or the city did something. Might be something they like, might be something they dislike, but they did something, because right now a lot of government throughout our state, it looks like paralysis through analysis. You get what I'm saying? And until they're constantly letting people know otherwise, then it's different. And I mean, there are some people, I do see some small things. It's just like, I think that whatever happened, like SDOT and arts and everything else, you see they stepped up their social media presence, even the Seattle Police Department. You know what I'm saying? Because, like, people are demanding more information. And then if the information is only coming from one direction, you see SPD, like yesterday when the arrest they made, they put out a video, they're like, man, this is what happened and everything else. SDOT is on their Twitter saying, hey, this is what's going on over here. Seattle Arts, they had called me the day that we went and reviewed the space at King Street Station. They were like, hey, we saw your tweet, but you know what? We think it's incomplete. Here's what we have to say. And so, there are areas where people are really, like, upping their communication. And I would say this is a time where people in our city, our county, and our state deserve the maximum amount of communication and output out of City Hall, out of the King County Council, out of Governor Inslee's office, the legislature, and everything else,
I agree with you wholeheartedly there. I think when you were saying it before and you were just talking about, man, where is, an office like the Office of Civil Rights? Just yesterday we were talking about that. I thought, wow, here is a whole dedicated office from the city that should be having either strategic plans around this. What does it look like if we have another civil uprising that was similar to the civil rights era of our history? What can we do to be sure that we're responsive? And I think that as folks are asking for change, they need that communication. Again, everybody in government needs to up their level of transparency in terms of really mitigating how people understand they do their jobs and that they're working for us. I think a lot of the call to action to government is to share with us how you work for us, how you work best on our behalf. And when they're holding meetings and not even allowing, a citizen journalist like Converge or, even the Morning Update show to get a glimpse and to report back to the people, it's unfortunate that their voice is not being heard.
And right, and I understand that everything can't happen live and direct and everything else. And to be honest with you, I tell people all the time, the majority of my time, and we're always talking to people, the majority of it's off camera.
Yeah.
Because, you got to be able to get a backstory and understanding this and that. And even like I said with the visual earlier, I got the visual on camera, but the business owners wanted to talk off camera, so not everything has to be on camera. But, I'm saying the communication has to start. I was pointing out that my profile here, I've been saying this the majority of my career, is that through communication, all things are possible, and we want to be able to build understanding through media. This is the profile on all, on my social media, is building understanding through media, through communication. All things are possible, and that's really something that I truly believe in. So again, I would say this is that, man, big or small, downtown City Hall, if you guys are working towards this progress here, let people know. It's love-hate downtown, man. They put me on a mailing list. They'll take me off a mailing list. They'll put me on a mailing list. Sometimes they'll call me and then block my number and everything else. I'm saying, man, let the information flow be consistent. King County, if you guys are doing anything, Commissioner Constantine, let us know. Governor Inslee, it's our guy. Like I said, his late father, Frank Inslee, won the Garfield's first state. He was assistant coach, Garfield's first state championship, 1954-55.
You give him that credit every time.
I got to give him his props. Yeah. He won a state championship at Ingram.
Yeah, see?
Wherever that is. But, Governor Inslee, what's happening? Let us know. And, that's why I asked directly. My mama says a closed mouth don't get fed. Governor Inslee, let us know. What are you and your offices in Olympia doing to address these things on a state level? Dow Constantine, what are you doing? We'd love to be able to tell people. We got lots of information on protesters, on community groups and organizations. We need more information on you. City council members. You don't have to live in D3. You know what I'm saying? Early on, Dan Strauss used to hit me up. He's like, hey, what's going on? I haven't heard from you. It doesn't matter if the protest as in CHOP is in your district or not. You know what I'm saying? Lisa Herbold, all of these guys, what I'm saying? Come, it's fine. We'll go to you. So that's not an issue, but let the communication be there, because the communication was there early on, and then it's no communication, you know what I'm saying? So, the office of the mayor, all these other executive officers that are there, we don't want to exclude you. We want to include you. And that's why I keep bringing this up. So.
Yeah. I think that you're right on that. And one of the things that I wanted to say, because just yesterday I was having this discussion, this is the time for all of those folks to step up and step out of what used to be the old normal. And I think the old normal really represents, hey, we're doing things and we gotta, make sure our statement is polished and precise before we, say anything. But people want to know, people want to know what's going on. Yeah. And honestly, it really, now, it of all times, it represents an opportunity for these guys to step out in front and say, look, this is how we're doing this. These are the conversations I'm having right now. These are the things that how I'm spending my 8 hours a paid day from that the city that you people pay for me. Exactly.
That's what these guys don't understand. If you have an honest relationship with the public is so forgiving and everything else. It's when y'all come off too polished and too whatever. If you come to the public and say, you know what? We working on this thing right now. We want to work on it together. And this is where we're at right now. Let's do something. But, take an approach, a standoffish approach. And then when they do put something out and it's crap, then it gets knocked out instead of just, taking a different approach. Yeah. We're going to take a quick break right now. I'm going to hop off the set. Looks like Marcus Henderson has arrived. He's a farmer, so he had to kick all that dirt off his boots before he walked into our studio. You're watching the Morning Update Show.
Welcome back to the Morning Update Show right here. I'm your host, Trae Holiday, and I'm excited to bring Marcus back on. I know that we actually had a clip. You represent Black Farming.
Black Star Farmers.
Black Star Farmers. And we had a great clip of you yesterday. I know Omari and the team were able to catch up with you while you were actually out there in the garden. So I want to get right into it. What does this really mean to you in terms of like keeping that garden going?
I was trying to put out this press release.
It's a legacy. The work and everything that happened in CHOP is something that is historical, and it's something that this community needs to remember, and this community should want to have this be a part of their legacy. You know, everything that's going on in Cal Anderson historically, fighting for queer rights, like this is the next part of this history in this space, and we believe that Black lives should be honored in this space as well. You know, it's only adding to the beautiful history of this location.
So I have my own question. In general, in terms of Black farming, right, and just the nature of life growing in the ground, right, things growing in the ground. How connected is that messaging to you in terms of the lives that were here in CHOP?
This community. The plants in this community are taking root, right? They're pulling up nutrients and resources from this soil and transmuting them into new life. That's what CHOP is all about. We're trying to transform the painful deaths of Black lives through police brutality into a new society that supports Black lives and grows community. Again, that's why I connect to the earth so much, because it's transmuted a lot of my pain into a beautiful legacy and history. And the work has been going on for generations, and it's finally the time to start recognizing the importance of land in this movement.
I agree with you wholeheartedly in that regard. I think there's, obviously there's been a large demand regarding land getting back into community ownership, and what does that really look like in terms of equity?
Yeah.
And so when you're talking about farming, right, for me, so much of it goes back to what you just said. Literally planting something there and it growing and sprouting. What are you hoping to gain with that farm being right there in the heart of where Black lives were lost, right here in CHOP, and also the symbolism of the lives lost nationally?
Yes. Well, we want to continue to educate on race and inequality and gentrification, and what better place for the education to happen but in a community that has been creating so much gentrification for the South End and Central District. During this whole movement, during CHOP, tons of people from the community came through our garden and were able to read signs and talk to me and talk to other people who have experienced racism and learn something and connect. And for a lot of people, it was a place where people could tap into this movement that felt maybe a little safe for them. A lot of people garden in Seattle, so to see the garden finally gave them a lens of which to see CHOP through something that worked for them. And we can continue doing this. The legacy of CHOP is not over. CHOP is still teaching and educating through media, but that physical space is, in a sense, a permanent occupation of this space to remind us of the occupation that occurred here.
I love that symbolism, honestly. I got to be honest. I mean, just the fact that you're connecting it in so many different ways, I think it's just beautiful for people to understand. Before CHOP, you were already a farmer. So I got to ask you, before the uprising, did you ever think of farming in terms of protesting?
I did think of guerrilla gardening a lot. For me, I wouldn't say I was a farmer. That's something that a lot of people have put on me. There are way more experienced farmers out there, way more experienced organizations when it comes to this, Nurturing Roots, Yes Farms, Black Farmers Collective, The Common Acre. The organizations out there have been doing the work and have very skilled and talented, powerful people speaking up for Black rights and speaking specifically for urban farming. I myself have always wanted to build community through farming and through managing the land. I've studied a lot of natural building, permaculture, and I myself wanted to buy my own land and start a community to support my family. But now that family has grown to be everyone here, and I never expected any of this. But farming is, it is my form of protest and my form of occupation. And even when I'm not there in that garden, the plants there are occupying the space and speaking up for the lives that have been lost.
I think that's a great message. I hear that there's an event coming up. You have something that you actually are doing to promote this as well.
Yes,
Let's hear a little bit more about that.
So we have an event coming up tomorrow from 12 to 3, Saturday, 7-Eleven. We will be, dedicating this space to all the lives that have been lost to police brutality, and reading off all the names specifically for Washington and King County, just to remember those names and honor them and remember why we're dedicating this space. We'll be listening to speakers talk about, their experience here in CHOP and their experience connecting to the garden and what that means in terms of a healing space to provide room to heal. So, come out, support. We're going to be healing and talking and sharing our stories. We're going to be, remembering the names of those that have been lost and giving ourselves time to be silent and stand together in a healing way.
There's a lot of solidarity, honestly, happening in this movement. And before I let you go, I really want to hear from you because, like you just said, your family has just grown exponentially. And I think a lot of people that have really brought their lives to this movement are experiencing that very thing. And so from your perspective, as things move into solutions and, let's look at strategy and how we actually create sustainable equity, I just want to hear from you. What are you hoping with that new large family? What are you hoping that you guys all do together?
For me, I'll talk about farming because that's what I care about. What we need to see in this city is land being given to Black and Indigenous people to actually have businesses, to have farming businesses that create equity for the community. So this means converting public land into farms and giving it to black farmers and then growing Black farmers to take over those farms. There's so many different ways to grow food in the urban environment. And I know PCC Farm Land Trust has an organization that I think in Skagit that grows farmers as well out there in Skagit Valley. We need to do that here. We need to be pulling all our food from the city and feeding the city from the city. It's totally possible, and it's a way to build jobs, build community, to educate, and that's what I want to see, some of that money, that's being defunded from the police go towards.
Yeah, I think there's so much greatness happening as the community is coming up with solutions. And the best ways, even what Omari is talking about, is really, asking the elected officials to step up, because I think they have a lot to learn from, folks who are like, look, we've been doing this. You mentioned nurturing roots. Shout out to Naima Clark, my girl. I think you're right in terms of just having an understanding about who people are in this city and what they're doing. So how can folks reach you? How can folks get to know more about farming and what you're doing?
Yeah, check out the Instagram, Black Star Farmers. If you go to the bio, there's a link to a petition that we're doing for the garden. There's a link to our GoFundMe, which is going to be used to send money to those organizations I mentioned and also start creating the funds and resources to actually build farms in the community.
Amazing. Well, thank you so much again for joining us, you guys. It looks like, honestly, that we're going to be taking a quick break, you guys, and we will be right back. Stay tuned. You're watching the Morning Update Show. Welcome back to the Morning Update Show. I'm your host, Trae Holiday.
Omari Salisbury. Looks like we've run out of time for today.
Yeah.
The Morning Update Show returns Monday at 11 a.m. There is continuing coverage over the weekend. There's a few different protests that we'll be covering. conversely, if there's any politicians out there, elected officials, if you got something going on, we'd love to cover that as well. Let us know, and we'll do our best to be there. But otherwise, any other programming notes for you?
No, I'll be filming chats with Trae, but we're actually going to be building up the content, and so we'll be bringing that show back soon. Excited for that.
All right, yeah, I'm excited about it. We got a bunch of our other shows that have been on hiatus because of COVID and then the protests that we're actually going to go back into production next week. So really excited to get the check-in back on air, a few of our other podcasts, our TV shows and everything else. So we're all revved up over here on the production side.
That's right, ready to go.
Let's go. Let's take a stand here. Oh. I'm getting all those nice protests marching coverage, man. I get what I really need to do is go take these guys up on this massage that they offer me from over there. Take a spa day or something. We're gonna get out of here for the weekend. We appreciate you guys, your continuous support of the Morning Update show. I think you guys can see, especially the people out there who have supported us either through donations, through prayers, positive energy, and emails and everything else. We're continuously doing our best to bring you a better product. And when we looked at our Throwback Thursday from yesterday and we look at the production value from then to today, we've come a long way.
Yeah, absolutely.
And a lot of that is due to the overwhelming support that we've received from you guys. We're out of here until next week. Have a wonderful weekend.
Peace.
Peace.
Let our rejoicing rise as the listening skies. Let it resound loud as the rolling sea. Sing a song full of the faith that the dark past has taught us. Sing a song full of the hope that the present has brought us. Facing the rising sun of a new day.